Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for the morning, Ginny H. from Monte.
Good morning. I'm an alcoholic and my name is Ginny. Hi. And by the grace of God, the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have been without a drink since October the 27th, 1963, and for that I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm grateful for people who shared their love and their strength and their hope with me when I absolutely had none myself. Before I get started, to tell you what I used to be like and what happened to me and what it is like today through the 12 Principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would like to thank the committee, Bob, and the committee for inviting me to share my love with you this morning. I often think when I'm invited to share in Alcoholics Anonymous, I always think, God, it's a long way from the Long Beach County Jail. And I hope I don't forget that, because I have discovered on this journey that the highest you can get in Alcoholics Anonymous is sober. And there's no competition. So when they ask me to tell you what I used to be like and what's happened in these 20 years, almost next month, and what it's like today, I'm always real grateful, because I'm hoping that it will remind me where I used to be, and remind me to not take anything for granted, and to not get complacent in this disease called alcoholism, because I have watched by observation, and most of the things I've learned is by observation and my willingness to change old ideas and old attitudes. That people that have our disease, I have watched them over these years, that some of them get complacent and they forget where they came from, and they forget that knot in the gut, and they return to their disease, which is comfort. And the comfort for them, unless they follow certain principles, is to take the only thing they knew, and that's to take alcohol. And once you take alcohol, the alcohol takes the alcoholic. But the things I'm going to share with you is what I've learned. They're strictly my opinion, and today I'm most hep on one thing. I used to be cool and hep, sitting at that bar, doing, oh, my man, I love him so. And today, I'm just trying to be hep in the principles in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I have found for myself to live by on a daily basis. So the committee for asking me this today, I'm most grateful. I'm most grateful if there are new people in this room today, because, see, the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous is still the new people who walk through the door and sit down and wonder, what in the hell are we talking about? Now, I have to go back when I come into Alcoholics Anonymous. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about where I was raised. Now, the things I say are my opinion on alcoholism and my disease. I don't believe that my mother set me on the potty stool wrong. I don't believe that because I didn't have any brothers and sisters that I would have developed the disease of alcoholism. I developed the disease of alcoholism because I drank a lot of booze. And I happen to have a physical allergy. That in time, the physical allergy took over my disease, and I developed many emotional and mental problems. When I was a young kid, I was raised in Santa Monica in a lovely home. Now, Santa Monica is down here, toward the other end, toward San Diego, in case you're wondering. It's near the Pacific Ocean. They have waves. I used to ride them. God, I was a surfer before it was even style. But I had a thing that I heard my father say when I was a little girl. Now, I don't know if this had anything to do with me taking a drink, and I don't believe it did had anything to do with me taking a drink, but I found out when taking this written inventory, which is suggested in the book. It says suggested. Suggested. These are the steps we took which are suggested. Like the first page of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I got well enough, after much trial and error, when investigating you in the very beginning, I didn't come in here and think, oh God, I found the fountain of youth, this is wonderful, I'm going to walk into heaven forever. I didn't like you at all. God, if there'd been anywhere else to go, I would have gone. Imagine to have to come to a room like this, sit down with a bunch of drunks and have to say, show me a way to live, will you? No way, that wasn't my idea. That wasn't my idea at all. So in the beginning I had much trouble because of a rotten, stinking attitude, I'm not like them. Thank God, no. But I soon got like you. I got worser and worser and sicker and sicker. So you see, with the things I share today are my own story and my experience with my disease of alcoholism. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. God, I embrace it on a daily. I'm just so thrilled that I have found a way to live, that I can love you. Because, man, when I came to you, I couldn't stand you. And I am so grateful for a change of attitude. And the book promised me that. The book promises me two things. Many more when I became willing enough to fill the conditions. But the book did promise me two things. A change of attitude and a change of personality. Now, isn't that tremendous? If you're new today, imagine those two things. If that's all you have when you leave this room, it's the beginning of a change of attitude and a change of personality, you're on the road to recovery. Because the first page of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's going to be a guy that talks here tonight that after I had slipped and slided around in Alcoholics Anonymous and came in here, couldn't comb my own hair, brush my own teeth, and sat down in one of these seats, he said it from a podium just like this. And God, that day I can hear. You know, and until you can hear and until you can see, it's just something to me. It's overwhelming sometimes when I look back and think, well, why couldn't you see her? Why couldn't you hear? It wasn't time. The alcohol had to convince me. And when I could hear, I heard this man stand at a podium just like this, and he said, my name is, he'll give his own name today, and I hope he remembers what he said. I'm not going to give his name. He's got his story, and this is my time. So I'm going to give my story. He said this, and I could hear that day. He says, the first page in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that my name is so-and-so, and I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and the time was right for me. The time was right. God, I could recover. Now, when I came to you, I didn't have these kind of feelings about recovery. It was always recovering. I'm sick. And I thought, God, is that what I'm going to be after I'm 99 years old? Am I still going to say sick? So I went up and talked to this fellow afterwards. And he said, well, you know, he said, that's kind of a cop-out if we want to stay sick in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I don't want to stay sick. And I have never wanted to stay sick. I want to get weller and weller and weller. So by doing the suggested stage on a daily basis, I have stayed comfortable with me today and with God as I am beginning to understand Him. Back at this girl that was raised in Santa Monica, only child. As I told you, raised near the beach, went in the ocean every day, and I've once heard my father make a remark to my mother, this is what I heard. This isn't what he said, but this is the way I heard it. This is the way I interpreted it. He said, gee, I wish we'd had a boy. He said, when I die, he said, the Roberts name will be gone. That isn't, I heard him to say it like this, I wish I'd have never had a girl, I should have had a boy. Now that's what I heard, and that's what I took inside of me. So for the next 12 years of my life, I tried to be a boy. Now when I say I tried to be a boy, I did all the things that boys do, most of them. Well, no, I'd even try to stand up in the bathroom and go to the bathroom, my boy. You know, that's one thing I have learned to develop through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and by you allowing me the privilege of sharing me with you in love, is I have become rigorous self-honest with me by just telling the truth to you. And sometimes I've had to humiliate myself up here to be able to tell the truth, because when I came to you, I was a pathological liar. I didn't know true from false. Well, I wanted to be a boy so bad that I had baseball teams in my yard. Of course, I ran them. I told you what position you could play. If you wanted to play first and I thought you'd be better at catcher, I would tell you where you would play today. I found myself doing that this morning over at the restaurant. God, Mary Regan was sitting there with, Mary Regan breaks her anonymity. Her anonymity is like mine, like the American flag. I was telling her that we would go to the Al-Anon luncheon together. And I was telling her who she would sit with at the Al-Anon luncheon today. And she said, well, I have 2 escorts. And I said, that's all right, we'll let them sit with us. But, you know, I find that thing in me every now and then. I'm kind of putting you in the place where you're going to be comfortable and you're going to have a little fun today and you know, that's it. But, you know, I had to look at that. I'm married to a recovered alcoholic. His name is Bill. And he's tolerated me these years. And I once said to him, you know, I have that thing inside of me. God, I wish I would quit telling people where to sit and different things. And you know what he said back to me? God, something so simple. He said, what's wrong with that? You know, what's a big deal? You know, I used to make a big deal over blowing my nose. I have learned through the principles of what's a big deal. Like, you can't lead a meeting wrong in Alcoholics Anonymous. How can you lead a meeting wrong in Alcoholics Anonymous? No way. See, we're such a loose thing. That's why we're all sitting here sober. Can you imagine on Saturday morning all of us sitting here with all in our places with sunshiny faces? You know what I used to be doing on Saturday morning? Crawling from the bedroom. Couldn't stand on my own feet. Knew that I must have hit a drink somewhere in this house. God, and here I am, standing here sober today. So grateful. Don't even have to look for a drink anymore. I can smile at you this morning, not hate you, and most of all, not hate me. Well, that's a little gal, you know, that wanted to be a boy because she thought that's what her father was. I started to develop a complex of wanting to get my father's approval. And this went on until I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I wasn't even aware of this. I wasn't even aware of it. Wasn't even aware of this thing inside of me. So I developed an attitude, and I developed a personality. And that followed me through the door of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, in the journey between the time when I had the baseball team and used to dive off the Santa Monica Pier with the fellows, I developed many complexes and many attitudes and many rotten things. And most of them were attitudes. I developed that I wanted something for nothing because I'd been chiseled. Here I was. God, why did you do this to me? I started an attitude then. Why couldn't I have been a girl? A boy. I am a girl, you know. You bet I am. And I'm so grateful I'm a she. But at that time, you see, I had to start then blaming someone. And God was the only thing I had to blame at that time. Now, I developed that attitude, and by the time I got to you, I was very sick. Very, very sick. But in between that journey with this attitude, my folks were strict with me. I look back, they weren't strict with me. All they wanted was me to be a nice gal, to be happy, to get married, have children, have a nice home, to be free and comfortable. And I'd gone to Sunday school every Sunday, you know. And I didn't believe any of that. There was the attitude. There was a closed-mindedness that I had as a child. I started with this closed-mindedness as a little girl, and it developed more and more and more. When I was 17 years old, I took my first drink of alcohol. I was at a beautiful home in Salisbury, and the mother had a dinner for her little girl, and they served wine. And I developed another attitude after drinking this wine this time. And the story of the wine goes exactly like this. They served wine with their dinner. They were Italians, and they thought nothing of it. And they poured a glass of wine, and I had the wine, and I didn't particularly think it was anything tremendous. I didn't feel, I've arrived or anything. I didn't have all the inferiority taken away from me. I didn't have anything. I just thought, this kind of funny, and they poured another one. And she said, you help yourself, kids, to the wine. And no one seemed to do anything bizarre. I know I said, oh, yes, I'll have another one, because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I always wanted to please this peer group, too. I look back over this with me, that my father and the peer group and the kids that were doing a little thing like driving the car on the wrong side of the street, like at the time I woke up in jail, that goes in another part of the story. But the kids were always a little bit daring. Like I was the only girl that would dive off the pier with the fellas, but that was fun, see? I was drawing attention. Already I had started being an extrovert with this personality. I was developing this type of a personality before I took a drink of booze. So when the wine hit me that night, I didn't do anything so tremendous. I just threw up all over the woman's couch, all over her dining table, and they took me home. But at that time in my life, when I look back after taking this inventory and sharing it with another woman, I started to be dishonest with alcohol and wondered what you were going to think of me. Already that started from the first time I took a drink. I'm talking from hindsight about these feelings that I had with you today, and that's going to give me another day to walk in the sun, you see, for me sharing me with you in love and service. Because when I sit down today and smile at you and thank God that He's given me the ability to stand here and be honest with you today, you'll know more about me, and you will accept me and you will love me, because you will see what the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous can do with anyone's life when they're willing to work them. Isn't that tremendous that we can come in here and sit down and feel comfortable and we accept one another just as we are? So I don't ask you where you've been and you don't ask me where I've been. and I don't ask you if you have a nickel in your jeans, and you don't ask me if I have one in mine, that we just love you, because we have been sick people and we are trying to get well, not bad people trying to get good. And I was so confused with that when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. So my mother asked me the next morning, she says, why are you sick? Now I started to throw up from this wine, and I threw up 3 days, and I couldn't eat. And I didn't want her to know that I had drank the wine. Now why I didn't know, I don't know, you see, but I started lying about it, and I said, well, it must have been the spaghetti and the ravioli. See, I never once blamed it on the wine, not even to my own head, really, not really down in here where it counts. But to myself, I said something brilliant. I said, I'll never drink any more wine. And you know, that's true. I never drank any more wine. I never drank any more wine, because you see, wine made me sick. But that didn't take care of kerosene with alcohol in it, black bag if it had a little alcohol in it, varnish if it had a little alcohol in it. You know, when you get bad and you get sick, you'll drink anything like Vitalis. If you see it's got alcohol on it, or Listerine, if you see it has alcohol in it. Now, I produced this disease into the gates of insanity and death, but I didn't know that when I was 17 years old. I took the wine and it made me sick at the party with the kids. I didn't know the journey in the disease of alcoholism, the physical part of the disease of alcoholism. Well, I believe any of it. Mostly me, because I was stubborn and I was self-willed. That if I'd have thought that alcohol would have pursued me into the gates of insanity or death, I believe at that time I would have said, sayonara, and put the plug in the jug. But it wasn't so with my disease of alcoholism. So I just didn't drink wine anymore. Hell, you know, I'm that smart. Wine made you sick, you wouldn't drink anymore, would you? At 17? No way. So we're off and running again, but the lying started. Never once did I mention this to my mother or to anyone else. And the kids the next day, 3 or 4 days later, when I went back to school, they said, how do you feel? I said, oh, swell. I said, wine sure makes me sick, and let it go. No big deal. No big deal. So pretty soon my folks kept saying, you're staying out too late. No booze is involved. You're staying out too late. And I thought, now who are they to tell me I'm staying out too late? See, here's the attitude again. So the first fellow that asked me to marry him, I married him. And he lived it from Venice. You know, when you live in Santa Monica and someone lives in Venice, that's kind of over the track. On the other side. I ended up on the other side. But I mean, I didn't start out on that side. So immediately, I thought that was a splendid idea. I could get away from home, so we got married. Now, this is interesting. I look back on that. It's quite interesting. I believe at that time, when you're 17 years old, he loved me. And the book says that we harm people. And I harmed him at that time. Because, you see, he was in love and he was going to do all the great things that young kids do when they get married, and I stopped him. And the book says you make amends, except when to do so would injure them or others. And, you know, I don't know where I went once to try to find this man after I'd been sober 15 years to make amends to this kid. And I found out that he was married and had 5 children. The thing that I always wanted, to get married and have 5 kids. And I thought, would I be harming this man? Would I be making amends? I had to do some meditation and prayer over that, because, you see, for me to go back into this fellow's life and stir the wreckage of the past when he was happily married would have only been making me feel okay. It would be getting the guilt off of me again. So I drove from Venice back to Long Beach. And I said, thank you, God. At least I made the effort. And the willingness was there, because that says we're willing to make amends, except but to do so would injure them or others. So who was I to satisfy my own guilt to cause this man and his family any trouble? So from that day to this, you see, I've been free from that, because I was willing to do the things that were suggested in the 12 steps of recovery of my program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyway, I run back home again. I was always going back home, you see. I look back at that, always going back home. Now, I had an ace in the hole, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it till I came to you. I had an ace in the hole. I'm the kind of a gal that always had a rat hole in her wallet with a $50 bill in it. You know, always that rat hole money. So in case you weren't doing what I wanted you to do, I could split. I was always splitting, always going home. So I went back home again, and it was the same difference. And you know, when you've been married and you're a little over 17 years old and somebody tells you what time to come home, if you're anything like me, you can't tolerate that. Like, who are you to tell me what to do? Now, my father had put me back in school again. He had picked up the pieces again, and they were willing to forgive me for being a jackass and set me on the road, on the journey of being somebody. You know, I'm always one that they used to say, you have such potential. God, that word potential. In the Long Beach County Jail, they told me I had potential, too. Sit down. You got a big mouth. So I left again. I split again. And this fellow was in the Army. And I thought, oh, God, isn't this wonderful? The fantasizing. I'll be able to travel all over the United States. I will be an Army bride. Oh, God, you know, this is sick. I mean, this is sick. I mean, really, I look back over this and I'm almost embarrassed of my own self to tell this. So, here we are. He's going to the Army every day. And then he went off in the Army. Well, the minute he went off in the Army, I did the only thing I knew what to do. I thought I'll just have a bottle of beer. Now, the booze hadn't really controlled my life yet. But this is the beginning. See, the minute I was alone, I did the only thing that I had always done. I sneaked and had a drink. Now, I just went to the grocery store by myself, bought the beer, then took the beer. Then I went back again and bought a pint of whiskey. Then and again, I'm back again. So pretty soon I'm calling up having it delivered. But this is just the beginning of this nest egg, this sick part of my drinking. So that didn't work. So I left that marriage. Then I got married again. You know, I was always going to get fixed. And I was using men to fix me. And I didn't even realize it, that I wanted something to depend on, somebody to take care of me. So the next time I'm out, and I thought, this marriage isn't any good. So I went back home again. See, I was so emotionally immature, I didn't know how to face responsibility. Yet, you know, I had conned myself and pretended like I did. I was a kid that in the summertime had a job at the soda fountain or at the snack shop. I was a kid that always had a couple of bucks in my pocket, always earning it, because my father said, when we die, you're alone in the world, and blah, blah, blah. And God, I started, oh God, I'm going to be alone in the world. You better have money, you know, money, property, and prestige. And so I'm down there jerking sodas. Christ. Down there jerking sodas again, you know, and I met one of these dudes. And I thought, that looks pretty good. He's from Beverly Hills. So we went out and I did the thing that was magic. I had a cocktail. And the cocktail had a cocktail. And I woke up the next day. And he said, I don't know why after we're married, you wouldn't let me make love to you. And I looked at this fella and he looked at me. And I couldn't believe it, that I had married this fella. And I was in Yuma, Arizona. And the first feeling I had was the same feeling I had when I drank the wine and didn't want my mother to know it. What is my dad and mother going to say? The same feeling. Exactly the same. And I wasn't aware of these things until I came to you and could share them with you and another woman, like the book tells me to. That I started that sneaky thing. So here I am now, I'm trapped. God, he wants it to work, and he tried real hard. And again, exactly what the book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, if I'm pursuing my disease, that I will run through people's lives like a tornado, and that I will harm people, and that I will hurt people, because I'm sick and I'm selfish and I don't know any better. And I didn't know any better, because I didn't know any other way to fly. I didn't have any of those good things today. I was always in collision with my inside. One thing inside of me was saying, oh God, that's not right to be this way. And the other side was saying, well, why not? You haven't got any other choice. You know, after all, you're going to be alone someday. You better get it while you're young. So the attitudes were always in collision with each other. So the drinking made everything easier for me at this time. So that didn't work. So here I am back home again. God, I was running back home. Always go back home and start over. You know, the book talks about geographics. It talks about we run here and then, we change locations, we do different things. I change locations. I'd go from Santa Monica to Long Beach. God, I even once got on a train and went to the University of Missouri. You know, I look back at Columbia, always trying to find, always going to be somebody when I grew up. I was always going to be somebody when I grew up. So I went back home again. And this time, my disease has progressed. The physical allergy of alcohol has progressed. Coupled with that obsession that this time it will be different. I won't do that anymore. I won't be like this anymore. Not really. I'll go out and I'll be a lady. I'll sit at the piano bar and I won't sing this time. And I won't wet my pants this time. I'll drink a half a cup of olive oil before I go out. And a half a cube of butter. Because I didn't want to show my rear end. I wanted to be a lady sitting there and having a martini, you know, twirling the olive. And I do that for one or two. I can remember sitting at the Biltmore Bowl, and I looked, oh God, you curl my eyelashes. God, I haven't thought of this for a year. I'd go in the lady red. I'd get prepared. I don't know if any of you other gals ever did what I did. I'd get prepared. I'd go in the ladies' red. Get off the bus. Take the bus from Santa Monica into the Biltmore Bowl. Go into the ladies' restroom. Now, none of this is that I was going to not know where I wake up, shack up with anybody. None of these things ever enter my mind because, don't forget, I have the obsession about the disease of alcoholism. This time it'll be different. I go into the ladies' restroom, get off the bus. You know, you're feeling kind of timid inside of you. Think, I wonder if anybody saw me really, you know. And I used to get these feelings. That's that inferiority, that fear. Because, see, when I got sober and really found out I wasn't doing right with me. I wasn't doing right. Right and wrong. There's no in between, and I wasn't right, you see. I wasn't honest. I was starting a cheating, dishonest process with Ginny, nobody else, just Ginny. So here I go into the ladies' restroom, take out my eyelash curler, curl the eyelash. Then I get this one. Didn't wear glasses, and it took me a long time to be able to know that I can't see you unless I wear these glasses. And so, hell, I used to get up the podium and say, my name's Ginny, I'm an alcoholic without the glasses, and I go, God, I wonder if anybody else there. So I had to pocket that false pride and know that this is just me and I have to see you today because I love you, and whether I've got glasses on or not, it's not going to make a hoot in hell to you because I don't have that false pride anymore, that you're not going to like me if I have glasses on. You know, I used to have weird feelings. Oh, God, I was a weirdo. Anyway, after curling the eyelashes, pulling down the panties, yeah, I used to have panties. I still do, but then I lose them. I don't lose my pants anymore either. I'd go out to sit, to have a little dance at the Biltmore Bowl. I'd have a martini, look around, taste the joint. Somebody send me down a drink, and I say, no thanks. I don't accept drinks. Yeah. God, I was stupid. Wait a minute, you haven't heard this. So I'd gulp one, you know, I'd try to be dainty in the beginning, just sip and twirl and chirp and, you know, ladylike. So pretty soon I'd say to the bartender, when you have time, I'll have another martini. So I got two now. Oh, here comes this drink down the bar again. I says, tell him thanks a lot. Now I've got about three. From then on, I don't know. The next day this fellow looked at me and he said, you know how many martinis you drank? And I said 3. He said, you drank 16, and then I lost count. But to be able to walk around on your feet, you know, and still navigate and not know one thing. I didn't know one thing what was happening. I didn't know one thing after about 3 martinis. And, you know, I kept going back because this time it's different. I'll have 4. I'll eat more butter. I'll drink more olive oil. So some way, somehow, I was going to whip this thing with a martini. So after I threw up all over the Biltmore Bowl, they asked me not to come back anymore. And, you know, that hurt my feelings. I look back, you know. That hurt my feelings. Because didn't they know who I was? The insanity of this disease that I had, my God. So I made a big move. I moved from... See, my disease is now starting to progress, really. I'm beginning to depend on alcohol. In no way do I know that I'm depending on alcohol to function. No way. So I took a big trip I went from Santa Monica, I left the father and mother. Because I was beginning to have these feelings sometimes when my mother would look at me after she might chase me down the street in the middle of the night. Yeah, because I got to be fighting then. If you said anything to me and I had a few snorts, she said something back to me and I'd say, you know, that sassing and that things that, oh my God, I've made amends to my father and mother over these 20 years. I've really made amends. And how do you think that is? The first sponsor I had, she died. She died sober, 28 years sober. And I said, how do I ever make amends to this father and this mother that I have hurt? This mother has developed arthritis in her legs from running down the street after this child in the middle of the night. How do I make amends? How do I let her know I'm sorry for the heartaches I've caused her all those years? And this gal, she told me something wonderful. She said, you make amends by staying sober one day at a time. And that's how I made amends to these parents of mine. Then I went through their life like a tornado. And I went through your life like a tornado if you'd have held still 1 minute and allowed me to hold through your life. 1 minute I went through anyone's life if I could use you, and I wasn't even aware of these defects and these shortcomings that I had. So I made amends to this mother and father, and she's 90 years old today. And I go once a week, and I change the bed, and I do these things for my dad and mother, you know, because today, you see, I can do this with love. Not, oh God, do I have to go down there again. I used to dream from Santa Monica, and I know every time I went up to my father's house, I knew I was going to have a fight with him. And I did. I'd already prepared for the fight. If he says this, I'll say that. If he says this, I'll say that. God, before I ever got to Santa Monica, I had a fight, and I had the story all laid out, what I was going to say to Dad. Oh, yes, sir. And your potential, having all the money we spent on you, putting you through school, dancing school, theater school, do, and look at you. He'd say, and then I'd go, well, if you hadn't done this and that, the back of Jesus, he was as sick as I was. Of course, I disappointed him, so, but he can be sick. He doesn't have to change his attitude. I took the book of alcohol. I've got to go back a minute. I got to backtrack on this because it's bothered me. And anything that's ever bothered me in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've shared with you, and it doesn't bother me anymore when I leave this room. When I first came to you, I took the book of Alcoholics Anonymous up to my father and mother. You see, I blamed them for me being the only child. And I knew as I sat in front of the psychiatrist and I told him this sad story of mine, that I'm the only child and everybody else has got brothers and sisters, you know. And the psychiatrist, he agreed with me, you know, and God, when I left his office, I stopped at the liquor store. I mean, you would too, if you'd been the only child. Now, what the hell's the big deal about being the only child? There are a lot of people who are the only kids. I only have one son, real grateful for him. I'll tell you about him a little bit later. About this child that was brought into my life. So I already had the fight, and every time I left Santa Monica, I developed another pattern with my disease. I stopped and got that old faithful bottle, my old comforter. I'll show him. My God, he doesn't understand me. And I'm driving from Santa Monica. I'd moved to Long Beach then, you know, that's a long ways on this geographic guide tour. But yet, there's something kept pulling me back there. The guilt. Every Sunday I'd go back up there. Every Sunday I'd have a fight. Every Sunday I'd stop at the liquor store on the way home. Then I'd be drunk 4 days. During the week, back again on Sundays, going through that pretending. God, isn't that a lot to give up? Oh, wow. I mean, the things that you give up when you get sober. Throwing up. My first spiritual experience was looking at an egg. God, I looked at an egg. You know, that's pretty good. After you've thrown up for a month and you come into Alcoholics Anonymous and somebody says, let's have breakfast. And you have an egg and you look down at it. God, and you don't throw up or you don't have to run to the restroom. You just think, my God, it's an egg. Because it brought me back to the time my mother used to say, here's your egg and eat your breakfast. And I'd be hung over. My God, I was a blackout drunk that'd have a knot on my head and not even know I'd had a knot on my head. And my dad would look at me and say, what's that on your head? And I was a quick thinker. I thought, oh, my God. And I'd reach up and touch my head. I said, oh, I fell last night against the dashboard where it was in an automobile accident. I always had a quick lie to tell. It wouldn't be a quick lie, always a quick lie. So I moved to Long Beach now, and I knew that the drinking was, I thought you shouldn't drink so much. And you're certainly never going to get married again. I mean, there are people that aren't supposed to be wives, and there are people that aren't supposed to be husbands, and so you're one of them, and I started rationalizing and justifying. So I took a job. I was fortunate. With this education, they kept forcing me back to school. Yes, right. And I was always coming into Alcoholics Anonymous in the beginning. Any newcomers, give your name. I'm Ginny. That went on and on a couple of years. Any newcomers, I'm Ginny. One of these guys that loved me real well in Alcoholics Anonymous, he says, why in the hell don't you go a day at a time without taking a drink so you don't have to be a newcomer? Aren't you tired? Made sense. Hurt my feelings, though. I'm sensitive, I went home and thought, how could he talk to me like that? Really. I mean, after all, they're supposed to be kind and loving in Alcoholics Anonymous. Care about you. He cared about me. He cared about me. Same as another old guy in Long Beach said to me, why don't you take the bananas out of your ears and shove them in your mouth? He says, for Christ. He says, all you do is talk. I'm sensitive. Hurt my feelings. Drove back to Long Beach and cried all the way. I mean, my God, how could he do that to me when I'm trying so hard? Those things helped me. They helped me because I got home and I fought taking that first drink. I fought the thing that I knew, the only thing that I knew how to get comfortable, and that was to take a drink. I developed this disease progressively. It had gotten worse, and the only way I knew to get comfortable was to take a drink. I was at the time when I couldn't stand pain anymore. No more pain. So I did the thing that I always did. Whenever I hurt, I took a drink. Not to get drunk. Not to have fun anymore. Not, oh, my man, I love him so, sitting at the bar stool. Not the old martini with the olive in it. Just a jug to get out of it. God, no more pain. So I moved from Santa Monica to Long Beach, and I was fortunate. I found a good job. I sometimes think that we could fall into a cesspool and come out smelling like a rose. I really do. It's a funny thing. And God, this power, this greatness must know that we really don't want to be rotten, stinking people, that we want to be fair and honest in all of our affairs and love one another. I really believe that. And the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous have developed those principles in me and those desires of caring about my fellow man and to love and to live and to let you live your life as you see fit. These are the things that I have learned on this journey. So when I moved to Long Beach and I got this good job, I was going to change. My intentions were good. I said to a new baby of mine that I'm working with, I said, God, I paved the road to hell with good intentions. And I really did. I always had good intentions. This time it'll be different. I won't do that again. I didn't know any better, and the good inside of me didn't want to do that again, you see. No way. So at this automobile agency was R.O. Gould, Chrysler, and Plymouth in Long Beach. And I tried to make amends to them for stealing. Didn't take the job to be a thief. Took the job and thought I was grateful for it. Made sure that I rented a room up the street in a lovely home. They had board and care. I never boarded there. She tried to care for me, and I abused that too, you see. But in this room, I could walk to R.O. Gould, Chrysler, and Plymouth, cross the street with a cocktail lounge. I had everything all planned on the drugstore. On the corner was a drugstore where I could get my bromo seltzer in the morning. Before I came to you, I was almost a bromide. Didn't know anything about bromides. God, I had a pattern. You see, the same old pattern. Always putting everything in its right place. Like what I said to Mary Regan, now you sit with me at the luncheon, and I'll have you sit here, and I'll have Shirley sit there, and God, I looked back here, I had the whole thing set. You walk down the street in the morning, you go by the cleaning shop. If you didn't go home, you walk in the cleaners, you change your clothes in the cleaners, you shake. The woman knew you were a drunk, but she didn't care. You took off your clothes, put on your new clothes, you walked across the street to the other corner, 16th and American. The druggist saw you coming, he mixed your bromo seltzer. He saw you coming through the door, you got the bromo going. You take the bromo, you whip across the street to R.O. Gould, you go in and go, good morning. Everything's swell. But the inside of you here, I thought, oh my God, if they only knew where I was last night. Oh, if they only knew what oh my God, that dishonesty, that guilt, and the book talks about guilt. The book talks about remorse. The book talks about these things to me. And I must be rid of them. How do you be rid of them? How did I be rid of them? When I came to you, how did I be rid of the guilt? I stopped thinking about it. I can't tell any other way to do it. Every time I'd start to think with the remorse and guilt and the self-condemnation, I'd open this book of Alcoholics Anonymous and it says to me on a page in the book, I won't tell you the page because I wouldn't deprive you of looking it up yourself. And it says to you and to me that if I go into remorse and guilt, that I will diminish the usefulness that a power greater than I myself would have for me today. So I've had to work real hard on that guilt and that self-condemnation and that remorse these years. I've had to work real hard and turn it over on a daily basis, sometimes on a moment's notice, because that guilt comes up again and again and again. So at Oral Gould, Chrysler, and Plymouth, I had it all set. You know, I was really going to be smooth. I was going to change. I wasn't going to go out with fellas anymore, and I wasn't going to wake up here where I didn't know where I was anymore. Just going to do this little thing and save my money so I could go on a cruise. Now, I'd get started and everything was swell. I'd go 3 or 4 weeks. Didn't drink every day, you know. Then pretty soon I'd be looking at the watch and oh, gee, I'll go across the street to just have a... Put the martinis in. Hell, you know, martinis get you in trouble. So I changed martinis. I knew it was a martinis. So I just have a vodka gimlet. Good for your stomach, too, they told me. So I had a vodka gimlet or two. Started the same routine again. And God, sometimes I'd wake up in San Diego. Now, it's funny to go in on across the street from Oral Gould. I don't think they even have that bar there anymore. I probably tore it down. And to wake up in San Diego and not know how you got there. And then you go through the routine of calling up Oral Gould, and you call up and making your lies again. I was always so busy covering up. I was always busy covering up my action so that you wouldn't know. What would you think of me if you knew? So when I got it under control to a certain extent. I timed it. I'd have 4 and then run home and go to bed. I wouldn't get in any trouble. Get back to work the next day. And that morning, then I didn't have to go in and change my clothes. That morning, I didn't have to have the Bromo Seltzer. So I thought, that's pretty smart. So one day, a fellow walks in there and he said, you know, I booked the horses. And he said, if you'd like to take the bet here, he said, I'll give you 10% of the action. I thought, that's pretty good. I need a little extra money. You know, after all, I'm going on a cruise. So I said, well, that's all right. And he said, now, whatever you do, he says, don't write anything down. He says, because it's really against the law to book horses. And I said, why, don't be silly. I says, I have a good memory. I have a quick mind. I won't write anything down. So pretty soon it got very interesting. I looked back over that. They're coming up the counter. There was one on the bed, Lulu Bell in the third, and Minnie Ha Ha on the fourth, and flip-da-dee-dee-doo-doo. And the next day they're collecting the money, and I've got the garage money, the bookmaker's money, everybody's money, and I just went across the street and had a drink. Couldn't stand it because, you know, I wasn't supposed to write anything down, and I thought... So then the bookmaker come in. He only came in once a week, and so I was giving him the money from the garage. And at the end of the week, I'd have to tally up the money, and God, I was stealing from the garage. And you know, then the knot starts in the gut again. How are you going to get out of this one? What are you going to do? So I married the bookmaker. But I found out when I took an inventory what that was. I found out that I hadn't changed at all. You see, I was doing the same pattern that I'd always done to cover up and to take care of me, to get me out of any situation, to make it all right. That's what I found out about me in a written inventory. That I had a defective character, that I was afraid. I was scared. And I had to look at a piece of paper and look at that. This is a gal that was a torpedo, she thought. My God. I wasn't scared of anything, I didn't let you know. But when I took this written inventory, I found out I was scared to death. Just absolutely scared to death. That was good for me to share that with another human being, that I didn't have to be all things to all people and to be a big dealer and not scared and blah, blah, blah. I'm the kind of a gal that used to go from Long Beach to Shanghai Reds and San Pedro. You know, I seek lower companions. I'm down there seeking them. What I'm really doing is they're seeking me. And, you know, I'm the kind of a gal who walk into Shanghai Reds with a long pair of gloves on and a mink stole that I probably stole from someplace. And I'm sitting at the end of the bar, and one of these girls just knocked me flat on my cedar. She says, what are you doing down here? I just come down for a cocktail. I said, yeah, you want to see what y'all were doing. They're all big girls. See, they're making their living. At least they were honest. I was down there because I didn't want anybody to see me getting drunk or ending up in the San Pedro jail. A snob. And when I came to you, I was a spiritual snob. I found out many things about me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous that I had pretended and covered up for all these years. So after I married the bookmaker, I decided this. I thought, well, he can't book horses anymore. My father and see, there comes the father in the act again in my head. He wouldn't approve of that at all. So I immediately proceeded to get him another job. I did. Man come in our goods, and I told him what a nice young man this was, and he'd be good in the oil fields, and I said, I think you ought to give him a chance, and my God, they gave him a job in the oil fields. So he changed his occupation from a bookmaker. He went in the Masonic Lodge. He did the very best he could, and I look back over this and think what a rotten son of a bee he was. When I came to you, I couldn't even say his name. I had a resentment, and I put him on that shelf. You see, I put him on there with Dad and Mother and all the R.O. Gould and all the other people. I had a whole closed closet full of resentments, and he was the biggest one. Because if it weren't for him, really, I wouldn't be the way I was. Now, I didn't have enough courage to leave because of the money and the property and the prestige, you see. So I was dishonest. I was a prostitute married. That's a lot to think about when you've always been such a lady like me. I prostituted myself when I married this man. And I had to look at that on a piece of paper in a written inventory. That I was again covering up this, making it all right for me, a very dishonest thing, the game playing with my head. This time it'll be okay, you see. So I thought, well, I've married now, and I'm gonna work this thing if it kills me. And so I was adjusting everything. Got him into the car business, you know, I had him have a car lot. God, everything. Nothing what the man wanted was what I wanted. So it changed his personality, and he became very abusive with me. And I thought, well, if I have a child, it will change everything. I'd always wanted a child anyway. So a child was brought into my life. I had a little boy, darling little thing, and I knew then that life was going to be fine. God, I'm a mother, I got a child, and it's going to be all right. Always I wanted a child, and it belonged to me. It was mine. Mine. Like my disease of alcoholism. Me. Same thing. I possessed this child. A possession. Another possession. Now I've got a closed closet full of resentments and a little baby that I'm possessing. Doesn't go for being very well. So I thought, well, you won't drink. See, the drink's back in the head. There's the booze right back there. You won't drink because mothers don't drink. Okay. So I went along, fine. About a year or so. I don't know what happened. The fly hit the wall wrong, or the man didn't come home, and he was drinking heavy then. He wasn't an alcoholic. He was a heavy drinker. He could take it or leave it alone. And he really was that type of a man that could take it or leave it alone. If I took it, the drink took it. And I couldn't understand this, but I used to say, well, you drink, why can't I? And he had me where I'd go, they'd all go out to dinner like the Apple Valley in Long Beach or somewhere real nice, and he'd say, don't drink tonight. Well, you know, that's like putting just throwing a match on gasoline. Don't drink tonight. Well, who the hell do you think you are? There goes that attitude. I'll show you. I did. I'd go home and get my face beat in. And that's something. But the guilt made me stay. I lived in a house for 6 months and wore dark glasses. In my own house. I'd look at this baby, and I think, I can't let him see me like this, and I put on my dark shades to walk around in my own house. Change his little clothes and all these other things and have my dark glasses on because I was too ashamed to look at me in the mirror. Nobody was in this house but God and me and this little boy, and yet I wore my dark glasses because I was so ashamed at the position that I had gotten myself into. Yet the fear now was coming to me. What'll you do if you leave? What'll you do? Money, property, and prestige. No dependency on God. No dependency on the ability that God had given me to go to work. None of these things was I aware of then. But I was aware that if I took a drink, I'd get comfortable. And I wasn't to get drunk anymore. It was just for oblivion. So he looked at me one morning, he said, you know, I'm so sick of you and your booze. And he left. And my God, the feelings I had when he left, I thought, oh, how will I ever do this? You know, how could he do this to me after all I've done for him? Didn't I get him in the Masonic fraternity? Didn't I do this? And didn't I do that? No, God, I got him out of the bookmaking, you know. All these things, what I had done for him. And he walked away. And then I got sober and I looked back, it was the greatest thing anybody ever did for an alcoholic like me. Because I do believe if you'd kept picking me up and dusting me off, I wouldn't be standing here sober today, real grateful. Because I had to pursue this as long as someone would take care of me. As long as somebody would give me one more chance. This time it'll be different. Oh, please forgive me, I'll never do that again. And my tape recorder, and I'm sorry. When I came to you, you know, if you handed me a glass of water, I'd apologize. I'd say, oh, I'm so sorry, I need the water. Because I was that sick. I had developed this personality of I'm sorry. And I was sorry, kiddo, when I came to you. I was a real sorry woman. But I don't have to say I'm sorry today unless I step on your foot. Then I'll mean it and I'll say I apologize. I didn't mean to walk on your foot. But I don't have to go around today and say I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I took a breath this morning. God, I was that sick I was apologizing for breathing. So he left, and so I had to wait. I didn't know what to do. So I did the thing that I always did. I took a drink. And sometime in the middle of the night I removed this child from this house. Don't know, I was in a blackout. But they told me I did. The Long Beach Sheriff's Department told me I did. And I woke up in the Long Beach County Jail. Now, that wasn't my first experience in jail. I'd been put in jail before for drunk, disorder, kicking. I'd been in jail in Balboa, and that's tough on Easter Sunday to make that one. But I had made it. I'd been drunk in Catalina and sent home on the water taxi for disturbing the peace. But this time it was different. It was different. I didn't know where I was or how I got there, and my first thought was of something besides myself. Where's Dee? What's happened to my child? And they told him, they used to put him downstairs in the old Long Beach County Jail. I don't know what they do with him now. I don't think today it would be easy to get your child out of jail with you. But it was then. And I laid a story on her, on the social worker. I laid another one of my stories. I'd driven a car a year before in 1958 over the Brea Canyon and had a ruptured spleen, and they saved my life. I was drunk. I was going from Long Beach to Pomona. And I run a steering wheel through me, and I was bleeding to death inside of me. I had stopped just for a few beers, and I'd forgotten about that. And just a couple of beers, it was a hot summer day right near the 4th of July. It was July the 1st. I'll never forget it. And I just stopped to have a beer or two. Well, wouldn't you, if it's a hot day? And wouldn't you, if you were going over to sit with somebody in a hospital all night? You're Joan of Arc. All these things, always giving myself, always trying to do something to build myself up, like lending the woman next door milk for her kid all the time. Always lending this woman milk. She had 5 kids. And I said, your husband's an alcoholic, I told her one day. She said, what do you mean? I said, he's an alcoholic. I read the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I did. I'd gone to an AA meeting when I was 23 years old. Because the man at R.O. Gould thought it was the goodest suggestion. And I was scared of losing the job. Kind of like Joe Powell. I went for my motor stunk, I went in, I thought, Jesus, this guy's a big salesman here. I better go to one of those A&A meetings, A&A, So I went that night up the old mother group in Long Beach. God, and I thought, isn't this great for these old bastards, And they're sitting around here, they're like 199 years old, and I thought, God, if I ever got like that, I'd do something about it. Man, I really would. So they said they had the book for sale, and I thought they need the money. I bought the book. I bought the book. And over the next 5 years, every time I got drunk and sick and sorry, I would open the book and I would read the book. So the message was dropped way back before I ever came to you. The message of that there was a better way to go. So this woman kept borrowing this milk. I bought a house. I did a lot of things, this man, and I covered up, did all the, if I had the house, I wouldn't do this. If I had that, I wouldn't do that. Always something out here to make it okay inside of me. Same thing, if I had this husband, I wouldn't be this way. If I had that, I wouldn't be that. Always something to transpose this out there on somebody else. To never take responsibility for me or my own actions. Couldn't do that. So this woman, she kept borrowing the milk, and I said, your husband's an alcoholic. I didn't say drunk. I was very dignified, an alcoholic. I said, he has the disease of alcoholism. If she wanted to know how I was such an expert on it. And I told her that I had read the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know that it took one to know one. I didn't know that he was doing the same things that I was doing. He kept losing his job, and I wasn't employed then, you see, so I thought, well, I'm not that bad. Always a thing, if you're not that bad, you see, you've always got a cop-out in your head, I had. So I said, she said, well, he'll never read it, and I said, well, I won't lend you any more milk. So she wanted the milk for the kids, she had 5, so she took the book, and I lent her the milk. God, that's the last word, I'll have the last word, always the last word. So she took the book, he read the book, he called central office, he got sober, and I hated him. It was just that simple. Every morning, he'd get out in his car and he'd go to work, and I'm dying now. The man's not coming home anymore. This before he looked at me one day and said, I'm through with you, and left. He wasn't coming home anyway anymore. And this John, he'd go by in the morning, he'd honk the horn. Morning, Ginny. And smile. God, he'd found you. He'd found you. And I hated him. He was starting to get comfortable. He was starting to get happy. He never mentioned, do you want to go to an AA meeting? Never. Greatest thing that ever happened, one of the many of the great things that have happened to me on this journey. Just waved at me. Just waved. Couldn't stand him. Now, his wife had taken care of my kid when I got drunk and didn't come home for 2 or 3 days. All they said, so you know what I did to get rid of him and that family? I sold this house, and I moved in Long Beach. I couldn't tolerate it. That guilt, the anger, the hate, the confusion was growing. So it's within a little bit of time after I had this accident in 1958 that I called you. And I called this man, and he came and got me, and his wife took care of this child again. And he brought me to you. He brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. God, am I still taught? Jesus, this is a ripper, isn't it? I'm going on. Now, I started the journey with you. And the man left, and I had to get a job. And I stood in front of this judge in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden, this man decided to get even with me. He was going to remove this child from me. And he was going to prove that I was an unfit mother by my alcoholism. And I had the 502 from the time I drove the car on the wrong side of the street. He'd found out about that. You see, I went back into that same thing. Does he really know? God, that all my life, do they really know? Do they really know? So I had started Alcoholics Anonymous. I drank. I ran the car off a cliff in Brea Canyon. And I'm dying in a bed with a ruptured spleen. And by the grace of God today, I'm so grateful I didn't die. I'm so glad that I'm here with you. And I thought, what will they do when they find out? What will they do in this court? I had one more time. I moved the child from a bed and woke up in the county jail, and the social worker let me bring him home. Because I told her that I'd been in this automobile accident, that I must have had some kind of medication, and that I had just stopped by a lady's house and she served a glass of wine. And a higher power must have been working for me, because she let me bring this child home. And it was 6 o'clock in the morning in Long Beach on Pine Avenue. So no matter what kind of a day I have today, it'll never be as bad as that morning when this child looked up at me and said, "Where have we been, Mother?" Never, you see, so I could never have a bad day. Never could I have a bad day, because all I have to do is reflect just 1 minute at a little fella, 8.5 years old, looking up at me and saying, "Where have we been, Mother?" And me doing the same thing that I had done all my life. Since I was 17 years old, look down at this child and say, "Your father didn't come home again. We were in a hotel." And I expected him to believe this, and then I come to you. And for 10 years, you see, I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous one day at a time. I've worked with a lot of people. I'm going to have to go fast here. I've worked with lots of women in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they've saved my life. Because sharing your love and strength and hope with another human being keeps you weller on a daily basis. It really is a giving away. If I don't give this away today, if I don't tell you what it used to be like and what happened, then I might not be able to keep this gift that you gave me so many years ago. So for the next 10 years with you, many things happened. I married Bill Hooton. He married me. I think I should put it that way. He married me. Isn't that wonderful? And all of you were there in spirit. And we were married in Alcoholics Anonymous in Anaheim, and the bells rang, and a fellow by the name of Bill sang the Lord's Prayer. Mary knows Bill. Won't bring his anonymity. He's moving up here. And all of you were there. God, isn't that exciting? And I thought, isn't this the greatest thing that ever was? And this little kid that went to jail with me walked me down the aisle and gave his mother away to this man who was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, who understood me and tolerated me with all my insanity and my hysteria, because, you know, I was a dinghy when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Today I don't have to prove my sanity. Isn't that nice? Don't have to have a card from USC Medical saying she's okay today. Because you know what? I know I'm okay today, and God knows I'm okay today, and I don't have to prove anything anymore. The freedom that I have found through the 12 suggested steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh God, if you're new today, grasp our hand and make the beginning of the journey. We can't make it for you. I can't make her journey. She can't make my journey. Each one has to make their own journey. I think that's what it says in step 3, when I finally came to believe that this power greater than myself would restore me to sanity, that I could make this decision. And as I make this same decision daily, some days 15 times a day, I turn my will and life over to the care of a power greater than myself. I say God because that fits me comfortably now. I'm not ashamed of God anymore, that I don't think will he ever forgive me when he really knew what I was really like. I think he's forgiven me because I'm his child. And somebody said this to me once, "What do you want for your son?" when I had such a time in the beginning of finding God as I understand Him, or finding self-forgiveness is really what it was. The human ego, the false pride, wouldn't permit me to say, you made a mistake, you were a lush, a woman drunk. And by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous, you stand straight and tall today on the sunny side of the street. I had so much of this false pride inside of me that I didn't believe God could ever forgive me. So this fellow said to me one day, he said, you think you're more important than God, huh? One of those old-time rocks that you just want to go, He said that to me. And he says, well, you're not, and you better start believing it. He says, and then he said another thing. He says, what do you want for your child? And I said, I want him to be happy and to be free and to be the best fella he can be. And he says, you know what? He says, that's what your Heavenly Father wants for you. You're His child. And from that day to this day, on a daily basis, I have a loving Father. And it's His business to take care of me. My business is to do the best I can in all my affairs, and that's practice these principles in all my affairs. I used to work for the county of... Here's a gal that almost went to jail for the county of Los Angeles. The sheriff wrapped her up, tied her up, put her in jail because... And I quit the county last couple of months ago, and the sheriff's department honored me with a lunch and gave me a sheriff's badge. Now, isn't that a ripper? That's a long ways from the Long Beach County Jail, just because I'm sober today. Just because I walk in your light and in your shadow with the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to love you. Because it's most important, you see, for me to love you. I thank you. Thanks, Bob.